Well, friends, one of the sages of Greece said that the measure of a man is what he does with power. How we use power tells us a lot about a person. Power can destroy us, and power can make us. And everyone has a desire for power, but it was this desire which ruined our first parents, Adam and Eve. Now, no one can create power. Only God has power. Listen to King David. Twice have I heard this, that power belongs to God. Psalm 62, verse 11. Listen to the Apostle John. Salvation and glory and power belong to God. Revelation 19, verse 1. But God distributes the gift of power to everyone in some measure. He gives it to this one and to that one in order that that person may use it to glorify Him, to glorify God, and not for the glory of that individual who receives the gift. It is this matter of using power for the glory of God that distinguishes true Christian virtue from mere human virtue. Now, power is closely associated with pride. It wasn't so much the desire to have more knowledge that attracted Adam and Eve to the tree, but the promise and the idea of having power like God and therefore to be worshipped and admired by angels and all living creatures. It was pride that made Pilate rebuke Jesus, saying to the Lord, "Do you know that I have authority to release you and I have authority to crucify you?" Being completely unaware that he had no authority at all except what was given to him by the Lord. Pilate's power was delegated power, and he was proud of his authority when he should have been humble. Now, power is deceptive. Even the honourable desire to be famous can be filled with pride because of the admiration we seek with it. Power. Some people want power to be able to control other people and to get get things going their own way. John F. Kennedy was asked why he wanted to be president, and he replied, because that is where the power is. And President Nixon, after falling from grace, said what he mostly missed about the White House was that he could order a helicopter and it would be there in 5 minutes. Tony Blair said, although he was earning millions of pounds, far more than when he was Prime Minister, what saddened him most was the loss of power. Many politicians in our parliament could earn far more money somewhere else. So why do they go into politics? It seems that the answer is because of the power that there is in politics and the status that goes with it. Why did Simon Magnus want the power to perform miracles? Well, sadly, it was not to glorify God with it, but it was for his own glory, and no doubt to increase his own wealth and popularity as well, I'm sure. We learn a great lesson from the Apostle Paul regarding pride. He himself was greatly tempted to boast about the wonderful experiences that he received, or revelations as he called them. He lived in an ecclesiastical culture where it was an enormous privilege to have a spiritual experience, especially of one being raised up into heaven itself. But Paul had to tell us that God sent a messenger of Satan, no less, to harass him and to keep Paul from being conceited about it, all because of the greatness of the revelations that he was getting. 2 Corinthians 12, verses 1 to 10. Hard though it may be for us to imagine Paul being rebuked for pride. There it is, 2 Corinthians chapter 12. Now, the failure to acknowledge God as the one who gives us privileges, blessings, and power is something which really troubles God. When we do not give him the glory due, even among the great and mighty men of any age, even unconverted men, God expects an acknowledgement of his authorship of power, glory, and honor. Look at Nebuchadnezzar. What a great kingdom he had. Look at how much God gave him. And look at what God had to do to him before he realized his arrogance and pride. Terrible. Nebuchadnezzar was so full of his own strength and power while he was walking on the roof of the royal palace admiring his estate. He said, "Is not this great Babylon, which I have built by my mighty power for the glory of my majesty?" Imagine him saying that. Then a voice from God came telling him he was to live with the beasts of the field and he was to eat grass like an ox. And then what? It was to happen until what? You Nebuchadnezzar, know that the Most High rules the kingdom of men and gives it to whomever he wills. Read Daniel chapter 4. Kings and politicians must learn that God rules not just in heaven, but among the kingdoms of men. Here on earth, God runs things. It is God that is behind all the events on the earth. God sets up one and puts another down, as Psalm 75 tells us. All the noise going on at an election time is actually about God fulfilling his purposes. Starmer, Badenoch, Forage, Burnham, they're not really the main players in the coming Manchester by-election. It's God. He's the main player. And what will be done is what he's going to do. What he's going to do to our nation. God's will be done, whether any of the candidates or party leaders mention his name. They probably won't. They haven't said to date. Lloyd Jones said that the worst thing that can happen to someone is to succeed before they're ready for it. We need God's grace and his wisdom to handle not just failure when it comes, but handle success when we have it. Pride and humility are far more important than we think it is. How wonderful to read that ultimately Nebuchadnezzar said that God, that those who walk in pride, he, meaning God, is able to abase. And then he further says that he is accounted. And then he's all the inhabitants of the earth, he says, are accounted as nothing, and he does according to his will. God's king. He came to acknowledge that. How wonderful. And so the big question really is, do we really want the power of Christ to be preeminent above everything? Or do we want the glory for everything that happens? Paul has it right again. When talking of God's grace and power, he said, we have this treasure in jars of clay. Why? To show that the surpassing power belongs to God and not to us. 2 Corinthians 4:7. And then he says, surprisingly, a paradox. When I am weak, then I am strong. How wonderful. 2 Corinthians 12, verse 9. An amazing and true paradox. Well, may God bless these thoughts to us.